Good morning, how are you? I know we've had you sort of in a dark room for the last hour, hour and a half, but I'll remind you that outside it's a beautiful, crisp autumn day with a nice mix of stratus and cumulus clouds. So it's a nice time to talk about the cloud. And I have in my purview not just Iris, InterSystems Iris, Iris for Health, Health Connect, Cache and Ensemble, but also our cloud properties. Quick show of hands, who is currently running in the public cloud, in a public cloud? Right, so we're early on with this audience, even though Mike has been talking about this since 2011. I wanted to start with a few numbers because we can't be in the IT industry without being bombarded by statistics, facts, messages from the cloud vendors about how important it is to move. Anyone want to venture a guess about any of these numbers? Okay, 60% is that we've passed about a year ago the majority of server cores being deployed in the cloud providers. So there's more hardware and more computing power in the cloud data centers than everywhere else combined, including the 7 computers I have running in my basement, despite my wife's encouragement to move the data center out. 68% is a large fraction, more than 2/3 of CIOs that are doing digital transformation initiatives rate the public cloud as a key thing, really important or critical to achieving their digital transformation goals. And 76% of enterprises are currently using more than one cloud provider. We see a lot of healthcare providers around the globe aligning with AWS, aligning with Azure, in China, obviously Alibaba and Tencent, but increasingly we're in a multi-cloud world. And at InterSystems, we've been really working towards the cloud in stages for 4.5 years. And the strategy has been to roll things out in phases, to take it a step at a time, starting with offering InterSystems Iris in the cloud marketplaces, and then building up a portfolio of offerings and a set of experience and muscles of running in the cloud. Along the way, there are things that are unique to the cloud, both in the process of the way you build, run, and update software, sort of modern DevOps, which is not cloud specific, but is necessary for survival in a cloud-first world. And the use of hardware and facilities that you can rent that you probably wouldn't put in your own data center. We support GPU servers for machine learning, which are difficult and expensive to procure, but easy to buy by the hour if you're running in the cloud. We support object storage, which is a very cost-effective way to store large amounts of data that is not moving very fast. Even things like Glacier, which you wouldn't use on-prem. You can't really get it on-prem except through some of the recent cloud extensions to move into your own data center. We support the ARM processor, and that's not just to run on devices like Raspberry Pi, but because Amazon in particular offers ARM Graviton-based instances at about half the price of the equivalent Intel thing. So it gets a nice price performance benefit for our customers. So the strategy is, if you will, an incremental strategy to work in the cloud, offer more and more services in the cloud, be ahead of our customers so that we're there when you're ready, and to take advantage of things that you really only would do in the cloud. And that really means that cloud is everywhere in our product strategies and in our offering strategies at really 3 different levels. And I'll talk about these and give you a sense of what we're doing in each of infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. starting with infrastructure as a service offerings. What does this mean? It's very simple. This is largely our customers running our software as you know it in the cloud. And this is now well established. We did a survey last year of customers, and I was actually very surprised to find that we had more than 600 customers running in every imaginable public cloud. So we have, and we're listing here, direct support for AWS, Azure, and GCP. We also support using our InterSystems Cloud Manager, Tencent, Alibaba. But we have customers that have been running InterSystems software in public cloud on Oracle Cloud, IBM Cloud, Yandex, things that, as I said, every imaginable cloud. In order to do this well, we've invested in a variety of technologies, techniques, and tools, including offering our products in public marketplaces, making it easy to try and spin up sandboxes. Our Try Iris runs in GCP, and a continual investment in standard containers, both Docker, and you can download. Many people are using InterSystems Iris from the Docker hub, roughly varies month to month, but about 8,000 pulls a month. We're working with the OCI, the Open Container Initiative, so that means providing Linux-based containers on any platform and supporting them anywhere, and an investment in Kubernetes that includes our InterSystems Kubernetes operator. I had two interesting discussions with folks in this audience yesterday that both went something like, do I have to use containers? You guys have been talking about containers for the last 3 years. It feels like you're requiring them now. And I want to be clear that we don't require containers. We'll continue to support traditional formats indefinitely. Many of the customers who are running with infrastructure as a service are running in VMs and providing images. And in fact, the images that we publish on most of these cloud marketplaces are VMs. You don't get as much I/O from any public cloud as you can get in your own data center. And every database, and in particular InterSystems Iris, even though we're very infrastructure efficient, is hungry for low latency, high bandwidth, random I/O. So we do have guidance about how you run them. But I will also say, you don't need to use containers, but the water's fine, come on in. If you're a developer, there's great resources for how you develop in containers, and it's a beautiful world because you can easily spin up and try things in different environments without reloading software. You can easily isolate your changes from a base image. You can use layers to build and control configurations. It's very nice. And from a production standpoint, even though there's more work in automation, having a declarative, if you will, configuration as code and source code control of your production configurations is very, very useful when you start really running at scale. Now, if you're using containers, in particular, Kubernetes is a very hot word. If you look on Google AdWords, the numbers are way up on Kubernetes. It's an open source project initially started by Google for orchestrating containers in a highly scalable way. And we've built a operator called the InterSystems Kubernetes operator, because we don't have much imagination when it comes to names. That's now on version 3.5. We just released 3.5. You can read the elements of it. It's essentially always keeping up with the latest with Kubernetes. And every cloud vendor has a managed Kubernetes service, like Amazon has AKS, Azure has EKS, Google has GKS. They're all promise portability, but I will warn you that they're all just a little bit different. And the purpose of the operator is to make it easy to run Iris as what's called cattle, not pets. That you can operate and have Iris be just an element in a larger set of pods that operate your application in a way that's designed to scale up and down easily, designed to be tolerant to failures, et cetera. If you are not running in containers, we also offer a thing called ICM, the InterSystems Cloud Manager. We've also been working with the cloud vendors to provide good recipes and techniques, and I'd love to hear from you guys what you need most in this area. If you look on AWS, you'll see quick start guides which deploy a pre-configured, ready for production configuration. So the AWS Iris example is a mirrored pair with each mirror in a different availability zones, which is a way that you get high availability. Amazon, for example, rates a EC2, a VM in Amazon at 99.5% availability. But if you're working across multiple availability zones, it goes to 4 nines, 99.99. So that's our recommendation. Plus disaster recovery in a third availability zone in a different region. So that's a best practice, and that's what we've coded into the quick start guides, working with Amazon through what they call their well-architected applications program. I want to talk about a customer example that John didn't mention, and this is in the States on Wall Street, a financial services firm called Broadridge. You may not have heard of them, but they process $7 trillion in equity and fixed income trades every day. So they're a fintech behind many of the well-known capital markets names. They do stockholder services. So if you own stocks or bonds, they're the people that provide you the communications. And they're a large, highly complex company that's grown. They spun out of ADP in 2007. So they've really been doing this about 30 years, even though it's a relatively new firm. Their challenge, as with many of our customers, is to provide data in a clean, consistent, current format, despite a mess. And the mess is because they have several hundred production systems, all of which are mission critical and can't be interrupted, many of which came from acquisition of different firms. So what they really needed was a better way to bring all this data together and to operate it with common governance. They've been working with Amazon very closely. They're one of the top tier discount tiers, so they know how to operate in the cloud. And initially they were building a solution they called a data fabric using 7 different Amazon services when they became aware of InterSystems Iris. So in order to provide both customers and internal stakeholders with this data, they had a fairly complex program all built out of microservices on AWS. By using InterSystems Iris in a pattern, they are actually one of the customers that have taught us how to talk about data fabrics, because they've been looking at this pattern in order to have data integration from all these sources, storage, the analytics Carmen was talking about, and a common governance. By using InterSystems Iris, they've been able to get the benefits they were looking for and do it at about 9 times the performance and 1/3 of the infrastructure of what they had been building when they met us. Now this is all running, it's all running in AWS. So there's a 4 nines SLA guarantee with DR. There's a set of VMs that auto scale out and then back down for their peak processing. and the operations in AWS use these runbooks that I've talked about. Their next step from being an infrastructure as a service customer is to use InterSystems to manage that for them. And I use the analogy of a race car with InterSystems being your pit crew. The ultimate in the pit crew is for us to be able to run for you applications and services. Now, clearly, we've been doing this with TrackCare for over a decade, and with HealthShare for about the last 5 years. We have a great operations team that reports up to John that knows how to operate our software. And we now offer this not just for TrackCare and HealthShare in our private cloud, but for Iris, Health Connect, and HealthShare in the public cloud on either AWS or Azure. And I want to highlight in particular an offering called Health Connect Cloud, which is a managed service operating Health Connect as many of you know it. It is running the latest version of Health Connect. We do installs, upgrades, backups, restores, management at the infrastructure level for customers, and customers do the close to the business work of interface engineering and of managing the interfaces and the integration. And this is available in the US, in the UK, in the Central Europe regions. You can see the services that we provide as part of managing Health Connect. So it includes provisioning operations, visibility into operations, data security, and we're leveraging a lot of the certifications we've had for core products. But of course, we have to extend that to operating in the cloud, especially in the public cloud. I'll highlight a customer, and there's a session about this at the end of the day, which is Northwest London's region. They had 4 separate trusts, all running their own integration engines. 3 of them were running Health Connect, 1 somebody else's engine, and they consolidated this into a single instance running in the cloud, which gave them both an infrastructure advantage and a labor savings because we're running it for them. But most importantly, they had a skeleton staff, 1, maybe 2 people per trust. And now they can cover for each other. They can provide shared practices, build interfaces across things, and people can actually take a vacation. So it's been a very successful go live. This has been a highly successful service. If you're interested in this in the UK, just come talk to anybody at InterSystems. It also has Amazon support both architecturally and in terms of credits, and we're very excited about it. Northwest London, as I say, you'll hear about it more later today. So I've talked about the infrastructure as a service where customers are using our tools and our software and techniques and patterns to run in the cloud. I've talked about platform as a service offerings, which are running that same software, a little bit more locked down, with InterSystems being your operations arm. We're also focused on building SaaS offerings. And these are typically, if you think of microservices, they're typically a service that's focused on doing a thing really well. So for example, our Fire server running as a SaaS service spins up immediately, scales up and down, has enough power to handle a medium-sized country in terms of the volume, and offers a REST endpoint. You can't go in and change the code inside. It's updated dynamically, but you can do everything you need to from the REST endpoint because Fire is a REST-based API. Same thing with, Carmen talked a little bit earlier about the Fire SQL Builder, and most recently, we've introduced a Cloud SQL and Cloud Integrated ML facility. So these are still in early access. The same QR code and program that Carmen talked about is how you use it. But the goal and the experience to date has been exactly what we want. Click, click, go. So you can spin up an IRIS database in under a minute. You choose, as you see on the upper right, a t-shirt size. This is running with a specific set of cores and size. It's under the hood, all running with containers under Kubernetes. So that's how we do continuous updates, blue-green updates without interrupting operations, for example. And you pay as you go. The operations and the experience with this has been very nice. We're next door to MIT, which is where I happen to do both undergrad and grad work. And last weekend, there was a hackathon with 1,000 developers, all students, and we spun up 27 instances for teams. They were all able in 24 hours to build models, have predictions using Cloud SQL and Cloud Integrated ML, where it's the same facility that Carmen talked about earlier. If you're a SQL developer and you want to incorporate predictions into your application, those verbs of create model, train model, validate model, predict are built in. And we have a facility, if you want to play with it, that will download any Kaggle data set. The Kaggle is an international machine learning set of competitions, and then load it up and you can work with those public examples. Our next step is to provide you a Jupyter lab that connects to that. Jupyter is a very common workbench for data scientists. So this will be added to our program shortly. And then if you go under the hood, it's a complex diagram, but this is what our InterSystems core cloud architecture looks like built in AWS. The blue things with cubes are all Kubernetics. So it's really, that's where InterSystems Iris is being spun up in containers. We're using the Amazon observability, so things like CloudWatch and backup. We're using Elastic Load Balancer to spread the load. Now you, as a customer of this, don't need to think about any of this. You don't need to be an expert in machine learning. You don't need to be an expert in Kubernetes. It's run for you. If I go out a little bit, this same architecture is made to run on any of the major cloud vendors to factor out those minor differences in both the data plane, Kubernetes and container infrastructure, and the control plane, by which I mean operations and logging and observability and error handling and reporting, and make it plug and play. So our strategy is to make this so that it can be cloud independent and offer it on 2 major clouds, AWS and Azure, and go broader. Increasingly, I see people who are running Kubernetes on-prem. So I mentioned Broadridge being a committed AWS customer. They have brought their most sensitive data into their data center through basically a cabinet of hardware operated by Amazon running AWS services on-prem using Kubernetes. So I think that that's really going to be the trend in our approach to build it once and be able to run it anywhere, is meant to help you have options as you move forward. So where we're going with this is to build all the cloud offerings that I talked about, the infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and SaaS, software as a service, services. And we have a list of additional services that we're working on to have in the cloud as, if you will, data microservices. If you've got experience with microservices, you know that for data-intensive applications, they're actually clunky. You can easily, each service tends to want its own copy of the data, so you tend to do a lot of data replication. Each of them has separate observability, so you'd have to sort of have a view across them that can be a bit fragile. And our approach to that is to provide a smart data fabric where we have a contract that includes this observability, both the data plane and control plane, and we can optimize under the hood to eliminate data duplication and maximize performance wherever we can. And then to stitch these together using a facility which is not yet broadly announced, not yet available other than under a controlled basis. So if you want more of this, come talk to me. We're just going live with our first Smart Data Services customer next week. The idea of this is to take the same services that I described, and they're building blocks from which you can build an application. And that application is then a template which you can customize, copy, or use hierarchically in a larger solution. So it may look like we're building many different services. They're all Lego blocks, if you will, for a huge box of Lego for you guys to build amazing things. And then this will also have a catalog with solutions from partners and from customers with a vertical focus. If you came to any of the supply chain sessions yesterday, you saw the ultra control tower that's built using this facility. The catalog looks like this. As a user, there's a master catalog, and you can focus down on particular verticals like healthcare, pull up the solution you're looking for, and then instantiate it. You're dragging and dropping these data microservices together. They're dependency aware, so you can't instantiate something if it needs a data source that isn't there. And then the panel on the right is where you add in customization parameters. So I could talk about that for quite a while, but I just wanted to give you a sense of where we're going, all in the cloud. We've been on this journey of starting with infrastructure as a service, adding in platform as a service, and then SaaS data microservices, which we're now going to offer really as a palette of Lego building blocks. And I'd love to hear from you guys what you think, what we could do to make your lives better. Because as John said, there's nothing more satisfying than helping people. Thanks.